People think the Ottomans could not be stopped in the 15th century. They think when the Ottoman army marched, kingdoms disappeared, cities burned, kings begged. But in the winter of 1475, in a frozen valley in Eastern Europe, something happened that shattered that belief. 40,000 Moldavians stood in the snow. Across from them came an Ottoman force so large it seemed endless. Chroniclers would later say 120,000 men, veterans, janissaries, cavalry, drums, banners, and by the end of one single day, that army was broken. Not slowed, not delayed, crushed, and the reason why is far more terrifying than numbers. It begins with a man who refused to kneel. His name was Stephen the Great, and this is where everything changes. Moldavia was small, poor, cold, wedged between giants. To the south stood the Ottoman Empire, expanding year after year, swallowing the Balkans, breaking crusades, humiliating kings. To the north and west were Hungary and Poland, powerful but unreliable. Stephen had ruled Moldavia since 1457, and he knew one thing better than anyone else. Open battle against the Ottomans was suicide. Their armies were bigger, better trained, better equipped. But Stephen had survived for nearly 20 years by fighting differently. He avoided glory. He avoided pride. He avoided fair fights. He burned his own land. He emptied villages. He poisoned wells. He made war slow and miserable, and it worked for years. Until the Ottomans had enough. In 1474, Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror, the man who took Constantinople, decided Moldavia must be erased. He sent one of his most trusted commanders, Hatem Suleiman Pasha, with a massive army north. The order was simple: march into Moldavia. Force Stephen into battle, destroy him. Install an Ottoman loyal ruler, and end this problem forever. When the Ottoman army crossed into Moldavia, it looked unstoppable. Thousands of cavalry, thousands of infantry. Supply trains stretching for miles. Drums echoing through forests, villages fell without resistance. Fields were empty, houses burned, no Moldavian army in sight. To the Ottomans, it felt familiar. This was how conquest always began, but something felt wrong. There was no panic, no mass surrender, no desperate battle, just silence. Stephen was watching. He had chosen the ground months earlier, a place called Vaslui. A narrow valley surrounded by forests and marshes. In winter, January, snow, fog, cold so deep it numbed fingers through armor. The kind of cold that kills horses and breaks morale. Stephen gathered his men there. About 40,000, peasants, boyars, light cavalry, archers, men who knew the land, men who knew the cold, men who knew they were outnumbered and did not care. Because this was not a battle, it was a trap. Stephen waited until the Ottomans entered the valley. The ground beneath them was soft, wet, frozen on top. Mud underneath. Horses struggled, wagons slowed. Lines compressed. The Ottoman army, used to wide plains and open movement, was forced into a narrow, choking mass. Still, they advanced. Confidence was high. They had crushed larger forces before. They had numbers, they had discipline, they had faith. And then the fog rolled in. Thick, white, blinding. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. This was not chance. Stephen had waited for this exact moment. Moldavian horns sounded from the forest. Ottoman commanders froze. Where was the enemy? How many? From which side? And then arrows fell from the trees. Not a single volley, wave after wave, from both sides. Invisible archers firing into packed ranks. Men screamed, horses reared, units tried to form. Orders were shouted. But sound twisted in the fog, confusion spread fast. Still, the Ottomans pushed forward. This was where things still seemed under control. Experienced troops formed defensive lines, shields up, drums beating. They believed this was harassment before the real fight. They believed Stephen would eventually reveal himself. That belief would destroy them. Suddenly, Moldavian infantry charged from the front. Not a full attack, just enough to engage. Enough to fix the Ottomans in place, then they retreated. On purpose, slowly, drawing the Ottomans deeper into the valley. This is where everything went wrong. Ottoman commanders thought the enemy was breaking. They ordered a full advance. Cavalry pushed forward, infantry followed. The mass moved deeper into the trap, and then Stephen struck. Moldavian cavalry hit the flanks, from the forest, from the marshes. Where heavy Ottoman cavalry could not maneuver, drums, horns, shouts, the fog amplified everything. It felt like the valley itself was screaming. Ottoman lines began to bend, not collapse yet, but strain showed. Horses slipped, men fell. Units collided with each other, orders contradicted, panic crept in. Stephen had one more move, the most devastating one. He had placed cannon and archers on higher ground overlooking the valley. When the Ottomans were fully inside, when retreat was nearly impossible, he ordered them to fire. Shot tore into dense formations, arrows rained down. Men died without ever seeing who killed them. The Ottoman army tried to pull back, but the ground betrayed them. Mud sucked at boots, wagons blocked paths. Wounded men clogged the rear. Moldavian forces pressed harder. This was no longer a battle, it was a collapse. Ottoman soldiers began to run. Officers tried to restore order. Some fought bravely, some died standing. But fear spreads faster than commands, especially when you cannot see the enemy. Especially when the enemy seems everywhere. Chroniclers describe the valley as filled with bodies, horses screaming, weapons abandoned. Flags lost in the fog, Suleiman Pasha barely escaped. Large parts of his army did not. Thousands were killed. Thousands more drowned in marshes or were cut down while fleeing. Moldavian forces pursued relentlessly. They knew this was the moment. Stephen had told them. There would be no second chance. By nightfall, the Ottoman army was shattered. Survivors fled south in small groups. Cold and hunger finished many of them. The victory at Vaslui was total. One of the worst defeats the Ottoman Empire ever suffered in open battle. News spread across Europe like fire. Kings and popes celebrated. Bells rang. Letters praised Stephen as a defender of Christendom. But Stephen knew the truth. This victory did not mean safety, it meant retaliation. The Ottomans would return, stronger, angrier, and they would never fall into the same trap twice. As Stephen walked among the frozen dead, he did not celebrate. He ordered prayers, he ordered fasting, he ordered preparations. Because winning a battle is one thing, surviving what comes next is another. And the shadow of the empire was already moving again. Stephen knew the victory at Vaslui was not an ending. It was a warning shot fired straight at the heart of an empire. He sent letters across Europe describing what happened. Not to boast, to beg, he told them plainly. I can stop them for a moment. I cannot stop them forever. Some rulers listened. Most did not. They praised him, called him great. Then returned to their own problems. Meanwhile, in Constantinople, Sultan Mehmed received the news with rage. An Ottoman army destroyed by a small border principality. In winter, in mud, in fog, it was humiliating. Chroniclers say the Sultan was furious, not just at the loss, but at the insult. This was not supposed to happen. The Ottomans did not lose like this. Especially not to a man like Stephen. Mehmed ordered a new campaign. Larger, better prepared, and this time, he would come himself if needed. Stephen understood what that meant. Vaslui had worked because it was unexpected. Because the Ottomans believed their own myth of invincibility. That myth was now cracked, but not broken. Stephen spent the months after the battle fortifying fortresses, gathering supplies, and preparing his people for devastation. Again, he knew the land would burn. Again, in 1476, the Ottomans returned. This time with overwhelming force, this time no fog trap, no perfect valley. They met Stephen at the Battle of Valia Alba. And there, the Moldavians lost, badly. Stephen's army was crushed, his men fell in thousands. He barely escaped. Many thought it was over. But Stephen did not surrender. He retreated into fortresses, he let disease and hunger do what armies could not. He waited. Again, the Ottomans won the field, but could not hold the land. One by one, their sieges failed. Supplies ran low, morale collapsed, and once more, they withdrew. Vaslui had changed something permanent. It proved the Ottomans were not invincible, that terrain, planning, and patience could break even the largest army. It also proved something darker, that victory often brings more suffering than defeat. Stephen would fight the Ottomans for decades more. Sometimes winning, sometimes losing, always surviving. He would die in 1504, undefeated in spirit, if not always in battle. Today Vaslui is remembered not because 40,000 defeated 120,000, though the numbers still shock, but because it shows how arrogance walks armies into graves, how confidence blinds commanders, and how one man refusing to kneel can force history to hesitate. For one frozen day, in one narrow valley, the unstoppable stopped, and the world had to admit it.